This is the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series. Each episode, we explore critical topics affecting the workforce and workplace, with a key focus on new and emerging trends across high-growth industries. Whether we're discussing the skilled trades, youth wellness and education, or supports for persons with disabilities, you'll learn about some great resources to help you, or someone you know, navigate current and future careers. You can visit us at careerfoundation.com to learn about all of our programs and services. Thanks for listening.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series. We're so happy to have you. If it's the first time you're joining us, we are excited to take you on this journey on all things employment. Today, we're kicking off a three-part series looking at growing opportunities for youth, especially youth who don't have their post-secondary degrees. There are opportunities out there for you, and we want to make sure that you know about them. Back in November, especially as we were going through COVID, we joined forces with the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity to look at what was happening to the labor market and how that was impacting youth, especially after the hit that retail sector, the service sector, hospitality sector got because of COVID. And that's really where a lot of youth worked. And so we were hearing from our young people that they don't know where to look right now. And especially because they don't have degrees, those who didn't have degrees felt like there were no opportunities for them. So it really prompted us looking at this a bit closer. And we started a research project called YouthFutures. We wanted to look at least the three top sectors and how young people can break into those sectors. Those sectors that we looked at were tech, health, and finance. And today we're joined by our first thought leader, Kamilah, to walk us through the research and what she found in that. Kamilah, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the project that you worked on.
Sure. So my name's Kamilah. I'm a master's student at the University of Toronto, and I study human-centered data science, which is a big mouthful. But essentially what it is it's about understanding how technology can be used for human purposes. So thinking through things like we have this complex vaccination problem that we have to solve. What are the technologies that can help us do that? So for me personally, having the human side of technology be incorporated into what I do was always really important. So the project that I'm working on with the YouthFutures project is specifically trying to understand the barriers that youth, and especially youth who come from diverse backgrounds, have when trying to consider career pathways into the technology industry. So what do youth know and not know about technology? What do we need to make more clear? Maybe what do we need to work with employers so that they can make better pathways to build a more inclusive tech ecosystem? So it's been a really cool project so far. I've definitely learned a lot that I didn't know about the technology industry from sort of like a hiring perspective and a labor market perspective. But yeah, it's been really fun so far.
Fantastic. So you have lots of information to share with us. But the tech sector feels a little bit scary at times, but it is an important sector. Why is it important for youth to consider careers in tech?
I think the scary piece happens sort of for folks who are not coming in from a traditional background. So I started off in economics, and I did a lot of policy work throughout my undergraduate degree. And I didn't think I would ever end up in tech. If you asked me 3 years ago, what is data science? I wouldn't have been able to tell you. But I think that yes, it's scary when you're starting off, but it's also a really cool thing to know about tech is that people come from all sorts of different backgrounds. So people come into the technology industry with degrees. People come into the technology with only work experience. People have self-taught themselves using free resources online. And I think that like diversity in technology is kind of unique to the sector because you truly can enter the sector from so many different avenues. And I think that is probably the first thing that I would say that's really important for youth to know. Don't be scared, don't be intimidated. It is a little bit scary, but once you kind of overcome that hurdle, you'll see there's so many opportunities and possibilities. And I think the other thing is the technology industry is relatively new compared to like an industry like medicine, right? Or like business. So it's actually a really great time to be in tech because you have the opportunity to shape the industry. So if as diverse youth or youth of color or women who want to enter technology, we still have the opportunity to shape the industry and make the industry what we want it to be, right? So that's not to say that there aren't challenges in doing that and that there isn't a host of things that, you'll have to learn and push through. But I think, maybe I'm biased, but I think that there's a lot of room to do really cool things in tech.
Yeah, that's awesome. And young people already have an advantage. I mean, we're kind of born, we youth are kind of born into technology in a way. Like there's
Yeah.
some are natives to it, and some really learned it quite young. And so things like you would really pick up tools and techniques much easier than older cohorts would. And so that's the advantage for young people. But tech is also interesting in my mind because when we think about the sector, where other sectors are sort of independent, right? Like, like health, for example.
Yeah.
What we're finding is technology is running through all sectors and connecting all of the sectors. And so no matter where you hope to look for work, maybe you're passionate about, medicine, you're passionate about finance, you're passionate about trades. We're seeing technology impacting all of those sectors. And so it's really important to hone in on that area because it will impact all of the areas, all of the jobs that are coming in the future. And it offers great opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's another really cool thing about tech is like like you said, say you're passionate about medicine, you can do like health tech, right? So my sister is actually in human resources. She loves being around people, she loves talking to people, she likes that, like she's very personable. And her like next thing that she kind of wants to consider is like the tech side of HR. So maybe
Yeah.
she'll start recruiting for people who are in tech, like data scientists or engineers or developers, whatever it is. So it's really cool because she's in human resources. Like her job is to talk to people and go out and meet people. It's not anything like what I do, which is just sit at a computer. But she's still finding a way to incorporate like the tech ecosystem into her career. So
Yes.
it's really, really diverse and like it has very long arms, like long tentacles, kind of in everything. But like you said, I think that's a really cool thing because you can merge it with any of your interests. I think another thing that people think about tech is that it's very analytical and it's very sort of by the book and black and white, which is true. But I also think that there's some career opportunities in tech that are overlooked that allow you to be really creative, right? So for example, designing products or designing a website or designing interfaces, to getting to choose like the colors that are used and the way that it's supposed to flow and all those types of things, you actually really do get to build creative muscles and flex them in different jobs. And so I think like that's another misconception that people sometimes have, which is important to like think through.
And so I know that part of your project was to develop a report and hone in on 3 areas that young people can enter into the sector. Tell us a little bit about that. Like you're saying, people think it's really technical, and you were kind of touching on some product design. Tell us a little bit more about those sectors that you looked at, the jobs that you looked at, and how young people can enter into the field.
For sure. So the first one that I looked at was what I'm in, so data science and data analytics. Like I said, because it's a newer industry, there's no sort of formalized definition yet. So a data scientist could do a whole host of things, but essentially what a data scientist does is it gathers and collects data and then tries to make meaningful insights from it. And I think like all of the three careers that I looked at, there's so many resources online that you can really dig into and get started. It's something that you can learn part-time and you can pick it up. The other thing is that it's very iterative. So once you start trying, you might not get it right away, but it's just the kind of thing that you have to try and keep doing. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, the one way to know if you're going to like it is to just try it and not be afraid to fail and kind of get your hands dirty. So that was the first one. That was data science. The second one was UX and UI design. So those are sort of what I was speaking about earlier. Those are folks who would design the products that you use. So for example, when I open up my Instagram app, which I do many times a day, you see the icons, you see the pictures, you see the menu bar. So somebody had to design what that initial screen was going to look like, right? So that would be the job of somebody who is in product design. You could also do something in terms of when I click on this button, it should go to this frame. So it's very thinking through how should a product work so that it's user friendly. And again, like there's a whole host of online resources that will teach you to do these things. Some are paid, some are free. But in my experience, like the best designers are those who are just passionate about design and are open and are willing to learn and can build a project from scratch, right? So like data science, very iterative, very much just like trying and doing. And the last career path that I looked into was cloud computing. And so that has to do, I think we hear a lot about like, oh, there's like things on the cloud. We really don't know what that is. But essentially it's a strategy or a technique that you would learn to use cloud computing as a tool. So a cloud computing course, for example, would teach you the different infrastructures and would give you the skills to be able to either build cloud computing networks or manage one that's already there. And I know that sounds a little bit like scary and like, what is that? Like, where is this cloud? But I think again, like it's one of those things that once you start and once you really like get the ball rolling with it, you'll understand more about how it works. And I think cloud computing is out of the three is probably the one with the least amount of online resources, but that's because it's also one of the newer ones. But I think we're again like going to see it picking up. I think so many industries are moving on to the cloud. So room for growth, I think in each of these industries and maybe especially in cloud is going to be huge. So yeah, I personally think it's a really exciting time to get into tech.
Oh my gosh, so many things
Yeah.
I want to
I know I just
say
threw like all
about
the
that.
information at you.
So many things I want to say about those things. So let's go back to the first one, data
Sure.
science, right?
Yeah.
And so when we think about that,
Mhm.
what are the kinds of job titles that come to mind?
Yeah. So data scientist, data analyst, data engineer, data manager. So it's hard because there isn't like a formalized definition of what you can do. But as a data scientist, you'll typically learn a couple programming languages. So you might learn Python, or you might learn SQL, or you might learn R. And those are like interchangeable skills that you can use when you're doing data science or data analytics or data engineering. They're all a little bit like nuanced in their own ways, but really I think like getting into data science is about like mastering those skills and then moving through, like you would have skills that would allow you to do a number of different job titles, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What that reminds me of is, when I first started my career as a data entry person, right? It wasn't just entering data, else that would bore me to death. But people are already doing these jobs and don't recognize the parallel or sort of the link into sort of higher level thinking about what's the story that data is telling us, right? And how does that inform decisions about, decisions that companies make about how we interact with our customers.
Exactly.
And so when we break down data engineering or, data scientists, really it is using data to make decisions in
Absolutely.
everyday business, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing scary about that.
And I think like data science, like you truly can come to it from so many different backgrounds. Like you do need quantitative skills and you do need programming skills to become like a functional data scientist, but those are not things that like you can't acquire if you just give it enough time and enough like patience and you kind of persevere through it. But yeah, I think like sometimes the titles are misleading. Sometimes they sound really scary, but when you actually do them, you're like, wow, I could totally do this.
There is a program that so you don't have to have Python to be working in
Yeah.
data. We are starting a program as we speak, really starting it up, trying to transition women who were affected by layoffs in the service sector to move into customer success roles.
Right.
And what that is really is about the data. And what's the data telling you about the customer retention,
Right.
right? And then how do you work with that customer to ensure that you keep them, as a customer?
Right.
And so that's sort of a pathway into the tech sector. And then you can grow from there.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are these awesome programs like Lighthouse Labs that do data analytics training. There's the boot camps. Let's get into UX.
Yeah.
There's boot camps that do UX training, and they're pretty quick. They're pretty intensive, and online there are a lot of great resources. Coursera is a great one that people
Yeah.
could look at.
Yeah. Or even
to
if
look
you
at that.
like LinkedIn Learning, or if you find
Yes.
folks who you think that they're doing really cool things and they post their portfolios on LinkedIn, I think that that's a really, really good way to learn, is
Yeah.
just by seeing like, okay, like what are other people doing? Like how did they build their portfolio? What courses did they take? And I think people would be surprised at how like open folks are to sharing their experiences. So LinkedIn, like just networking with people on LinkedIn has been really helpful for me, especially during COVID when you're not meeting people all the time, right? So if you are ever curious about like, well, this person's in UX design at X company, I wonder what they actually do on their day to day. I think a great way is to just like reach out and be like, hey, I'm a student, or I'm looking to get into this industry, or I don't really know anything about this industry, but I'm kind of curious. And I think like that's also a really, really great way to learn, to find new programs, to find new resources. Yeah, it's been really helpful for me.
Yeah. And I really like the thing about UX when, we have so many young people doing freelancing and gigging on website design and app design and different things. And really, when you think about it, it's technology second and user first, right?
Absolutely.
It's about the customer experience. So if you were designing something for young people, what would make sense for a young person in the way they typically use technology? And then you look at how do you enable that experience through technology.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think like, yeah, that's the thing, is that like to make good technology, you have to understand your users, right? So you have to understand, who am I designing for? What do these people need? And that's why I think like there's such a big need to have a diverse tech sector, because you have to understand a diverse set of experiences to build technologies that are going to work for a diverse set of people, right? So if we want to design technology that would be friendly to a person with a disability, then we have to have a person with a disability on our team to help us inform what that experience
That's right.
is, right?
That's right. And it's not necessarily a fully technical job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? It's understanding the user case, the product knowledge, and then sort of building the technology around it. So then you can build yourself into the technology, like the hardcore stuff.
Exactly. I think like tech skills can always be acquired, but that like soft understanding of people and just like even just work ethic and perseverance will take you so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when we talk about cloud, I am super excited about that one. Because I mean, what COVID did was showed us that we needed to become remote workers. We all needed to transition to home if we could have. And many companies who did that are working on the cloud.
Right.
So how do we keep information safe? How do we enable people to work remotely? Those things are really important. So that is a massive market right now. And I had, if our listeners remember, had Fod from the AWS team speak to us about cloud practitioner training that we provide on our website for free. That is something that people could just go to careerfoundation.com resources, and you will see the AWS training there, and you'll be able to access that for free. You can get certified, and the number of jobs that are available in cloud computing. And once you have that certification, oh my gosh, I've heard that people sort of hunt you down on LinkedIn to find you if you have that. Yeah.
No, for sure. And I think like, especially now, like you said, like everybody had to, or not everybody, but a lot of companies had to move online relatively quickly. They're looking for people to fill a need, right? And I personally don't think that need's going to go just like evaporate once COVID is over. I think it's going to, if anything, have built an established foundation to keep growing. And yeah, so I think like even just companies who, for example, stores who had, a large in-person presence and couldn't do that, everybody had to shift online, right? So a lot of us are buying our goods online now as much as we can. So just thinking through like the way that those industries are going to build and grow, and they're going to have the need for professionals who understand the structures. And like you said, it's one of those things that's really cool because you can find a free resource and at least like dip your toes in, get your hands a little bit dirty, at least understand if you like it. And then you are confident that the industry that you're getting into is going to grow over time, which is a really like great place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at the tech space, we often hear that women, there's a lack of women in that tech space. There's a lack of diverse talent in that tech space, right? So we've long learned that. What tends to, do you find that that's changing? Do you find that we're becoming more diverse in the tech space?
I would hope so. I think we're starting to realize that the way that not only tech but society generally has treated women and girls has not been conducive to establishing an equal tech ecosystem, right? So for example, as young as like elementary school and high school, girls are not encouraged as much to like try and to fail, right? Like we have studies that tell us that, like where boys are able to, are more comfortable trying something and then like they fail and then they're like, okay, girls are not conditioned in a way, like especially like through the school system, to try something and then to fail and then to try again, right? So tech being the way that it is, it's extremely iterative. Like everybody fails, like everybody fails. Like that's just what it is. Like you have to try it. It's not going to work. You're going to try it again. It's not going to work again. Eventually you're going to get it though, right? And so I think like we're having a reckoning now of like, well, we actually need to treat girls the same way that we treat boys so that they're comfortable working in an environment that is iterative, right? That requires multiple trials and errors. It's the same thing. Like we don't always encourage girls to go into math, right? We maybe like there's a higher percentage of girls who go into like arts or sciences or whatever it is. And I think people are realizing that now and are realizing like we actually again like need diverse talent in tech to build good tech. So I would hope that that's changing. I would really like to see, I think we are probably on the cusp of a big change, I hope. And that's why I tell people like, don't let the lack of diversity that we see a lot of the time, because it is a reality, discourage you. Because the more that we are in these spaces and encouraging each other and supporting each other, the better we can grow and we can establish what we want to build. Another thing I think is really cool I'm starting to see, especially like in the Toronto ecosystem, is a lot of women who are starting their own startups. So they're basically saying like, well, I can actually do my own thing, right? And that's really cool too, because if you have a really good idea and you want to start a startup, there's a ton of funding for that too, right? There's a ton of resources for that too. So there's opportunities to be entrepreneurial and there's opportunities to build something of your own. And I think that is really encouraging. And I really do hope that in the next like 5 to 10 years, we're gonna have a different tech space than we have now.
And when you talk about entrepreneurial, young people have that sort of built in. Like we see them, everyone has a side hustle. And it's
Yeah.
because they're entrepreneurial and can build these things out. That's fantastic. And so we are also hearing from employers on our advisory councils that they are really interested in creating more equitable spaces
Mhm.
in tech, but also across sectors.
Right.
And tech has always seeming to me to say we can't design for people we don't understand.
Absolutely.
And so now they're, making sure that they have those voices at the table, or at least there's improvement in that area. Yeah, this is great. This is great discussion. I want to continue by just asking you, this information can be overwhelming. And what we're trying to do in the report is
Mhm.
really break it down into specific nuggets of information that people can take away. Give us one piece of advice you would give a young person out there who would love to work in tech, but not sure where to start.
I think, well, I'm gonna say the Career Foundation's website is a good place to start. But also just don't be afraid to ask questions when you don't understand something, because keep in mind, everybody who ever started in tech didn't know what they were doing at some point or had no idea, right? Like it's a really new field. So people who have been in it for 10 years, at some point they started not knowing anything about it, right? So I think like just keeping that in mind and not being afraid to ask questions and finding spaces that are going to be open to questions and that kind of thing. So for example, organizations like Career Foundations, or I mentioned LinkedIn before, right? Just I think put yourself out there, ask questions, and don't be afraid to try is probably my biggest advice, because I know what it was like for me when I first started. Very like I was kind of like, should I ask this? Like I'm not going to know, but you're never going to know until you ask, right?
Yeah, I really like that about tech because, I'll share with you that my partner's dad actually wrote books.
Oh
He's
wow.
a computer guy, and he wrote books in terms of the really old programs.
Mhm.
And it's when I look at them, I feel really proud. But then I think, oh my gosh, how much of that is applicable now? And
Right.
so oftentimes when in tech, when we develop something, we can grow from there. But things are changing so rapidly, things are new, and the newness of techs encourage people to be creative.
Right.
And making mistakes is part of the job, unlike anywhere else,
Yeah.
because it's so valuable
Yep.
to make a mistake because it tells us why this will not work and not a good thing to pursue.
Exactly.
But
Absolutely.
there might be a nugget that's worthwhile taking away and
Exactly.
building on.
And the other thing, sorry, just the other thing about tech that I think you'll find if you start working in tech is the tech community is so big that like if you have a question, probably somebody had that same question before, and there's probably like an online forum that you can find. So even like programmers who have been programming for 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is, they still have questions and they still probably Google the answer to their questions, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's really a space that like if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, that's okay, because probably everyone feels like that.
Well, we could talk about this all day, but I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you so much, Camilla, for sharing your findings with us. I
Absolutely.
hope it gives young people hope,
Yeah.
because the one thing that we wanted to do here was to show pathways to the future.
Mhm.
Yes, COVID did a lot of damage to the labor market and to youth jobs. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why we need to inform ourselves about the opportunities to the future, because there are many
Absolutely.
and in different sectors. So stay tuned for part 2 on our series when we talk finance and how people can break in to that sector. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and webinar series as we jump into part 2 of our Youth Futures project as we look at finance. So we're joined now by Saad Rasool, our thought leader, who looked into how does young people enter the finance sector. Welcome, Saad.
Thanks, Evelyn. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to talk to the youth and yourself. It has been a great journey for me to be part of this great team and to find things in the finance sector. It is a growing time to be in the finance sector.
Yeah,
So
we're
I would,
excited about this project. But before we get into finance, I want to know a little bit about you. Tell us first a little bit about you and then tell us about the Youth Futures Project.
okay. So I'm a recent immigrant to Canada. It was Canada welcomed me as a newcomer in 2019. It has been a great journey since then. It was first winter, and winter was tough coming from a country, from a city which was like plus 50 degrees most of the time. Seeing my first snow, so it was a magical journey which started. But as you would know, as a newcomer, there are some struggles involved. So I was lucky enough. I had a background in accounting and finance, and when I came here, it was, as you know, there is like when you come to a new place, you build a new home, the foundation is most important. And building the foundation, that's what requires the most time. After that, the structure is easy. So that's how I focus on myself. Like, I didn't look back, and I took all the opportunities that I got. So be it working at a restaurant, doing some driving, doing something. So that's where I started. I thought I want to get how Canada is. I want to experience their people. I want to experience the culture. So that's how my journey started. And I have a background in accounting, so I built upon doing CPA. Then I started focusing on finance and CFA, but all of these were too costly and too expensive to begin with. I was lucky enough, I got scholarship in for an MBA program for a university based in Montreal. And that gave me some hope, that gave me some idea in order to where I find myself in this place. Then starting January onwards, I was able to help small businesses. I worked with corporations, I worked with small businesses, giving them my skill set, helping them out, and seeing how they are able to raise finances. And then COVID hit. So in
Mm.
COVID, where I was going to start my journey and take a kick off, it was a bit of a bumper in the start. But then I realized, like, because of working from home, it gives you a lot of time to talk to youth, to understand what is going on in the market. You can help a lot of people because somebody needs business plans, somebody just need someone to talk to in terms of how to develop their career. So I started working with different organizations, and I started teaching people. Like, first I learned myself how finance and how accounting works in Canada, and I started helping people in their payroll, in their financial literacy, in tax literacy. So I realized at that point that there are so many young people all around us, and they need the support because neither the school nor the universities or anywhere else they are getting this kind of training. And that's where I started helping them out. I worked on multiple projects with different youth, and that led me to start working in this particular project, which was Youth Future project. That came as a blessing at the time. So I was going through a very tough time at the time when this project came. Like, I got COVID at the time, so it was a very journey was very struggleful, and like it was being alone in this country and managing everything was very difficult. But this project gave me hope, and with the support of the team members, like, it felt like a family. And from there, I was able to start this journey on looking at the finance sector. I was already connecting with so many youths over the entire year, learning what their fears were about this industry, what they want to know about finance. And at the same time, there were so many people who made a lot of money in short span of time because of, real estate boom or trading on forex or, stocks. Everybody had that some extra cash lying, and they were just trying to try their luck and see how it works. So people were fascinated by finance, but they wanted to understand how it works, how everything come into play. And my one story that I would say, like, finance, where it triggered me to focus more on this was when I was talking to, there was a group known as Empower Her, which focus on giving power to the woman. And when I was talking to them, some of them were married, and they were like, our husband manage our finances and we know nothing about it. And then there was young girls who were trying to see how this all works, but they were, because of biases and so many things, there was so much to it that then I realized that it is very important. Nobody, no matter which profession you are from, which degree you are following, which background you have, it's very important to look into finance, be it as professionally or personally, because it plays a critical role on that. So that's where the journey of Youth Future began,
Wow.
and I started focusing on finance. Yeah.
Well, certainly you've overcome a lot. No matter how safe you try to be, there's always that risk. So we have to be careful. But you demonstrated a lot of resilience there just in your mindset alone. And so we're grateful that you're okay. But that resiliency is so important for young people right now, especially when we look at future careers as people sort of plan out their career. Why do you think that finance is a good career for young people in the future?
So finance is having a lot of transition, as you would see all other sectors, but finance right now is attracting a lot of young people, both in terms of retail investing and otherwise. So right now, people in the past used to think of finance as very narrow path where people only wear suits and they're vultures who are hanging out and thinking those things, and you have to be a lot of degrees and a lot of things that you have to plan out, and then only you can enter this. But right now, there are so many divisions within the finance sector, majorly because of the innovation of technology. So data, there are so many aspects of thing, and there is so much data. So somebody, they need experts in all fields. So in the past, you need to be like jack of all trades rather than master of one. But now you can be a master of Excel, you can be master of Salesforce, you can be master of cryptocurrency. Like there is so much innovation going on that they need the young blood. In the past, it was all about experience, it was all about degrees, it was all about going to fancy schools. But now, because the finance market has grown, and being in Canada and Toronto, especially Toronto is the financial hub. And you would see all around, like wherever you go, you will see a bank, you will see an insurance company, you will see something. But now what has been fascinating, like even if you're a small, like if you're an individual, you can do payroll, you can do bookkeeping. There are so many roles now that has been, because everybody gets to specialize in their own way. And the beauty of Canada is that they have small certifications, they have small volunteer opportunities from where you can learn these technical skills and then apply them. So whatever appeals to you, if you're a technology buff, you want like softwares, you like coding, you like numbers. So there is something for anyone who is in this sector. So from assistants, from call centers, from tellers to technology to new things. So they want because we are the new generation, we are going to use these things. So even when I go to any branch, just for basic thing, the financial advisor sitting with me would ask me, what would you like us to do? Like what type of opportunities would you see in a debit card or a credit card? They want our minds right now, because that the old generation is going from cash, and they were used to their style going into the branch. But new generation is all about phones. We are stuck on our phones all day long. So they want to know what type of experience they can offer. So that is something. So even if we don't have the right financial background or like the degrees, there is still a way to do marketing. There is still so much to do, and the sector is so many jobs out there. Like they're constantly hiring. Even I would like to share that I was talking to people in finance, and it was one of the growing sector even during pandemic. And people were like, because people had money, they wanted investors to find a way to invest them, and it was growing. Like be it accounting, be it finance, because COVID had so many benefits. So now people wanted to know how to apply for them. And those things, like Canada.ca is a website which has all the information you can learn. So you can spend hours over there. Government has developed the guides, but people are willing to pay you so much for doing those simple tasks, which just like you can do them on your own.
So it sounds like this is a booming area, and they're actively looking for young people. But like you said, like when young people, I mean anyone, thinks about finance, they think about dark suits on Bay Street and on Wall Street, really inaccessible jobs. And I know that you did your research around a few specific areas that young people can access. Tell us about those careers and the entry points for youth.
Okay, so in order to do something great, as I mentioned, like foundation is very important to build a building. So same is the thing, like we don't have to look at the top of the finance. Yeah, that is the dream, but we have to start somewhere so we can build our journey towards that level. So it's a ladder approach, it's a step up approach. So my focus was like in 3 different roles, which people think that they are just like dead end roles where you start and that's the end. But when I explored that journey, I found out that there were so many prospects and so many doors that they open. So they might seem like a basic role in the beginning or not something directly related to it, but it opens a lot of avenues. So the 3 roles I have been focusing on is the teller role in banks, then the call center role, and the text preparation. So these 3 roles, I picked them because of their understanding of they realize that we need certain kind of skill set, but not necessarily we need the degrees or we need those certifications or those expensive things that not everybody has the opportunity to do them or the time to do them. So these 3 roles were the one basic stepping stones for you. Like if you start your journey from here, it will open a lot of doors for the youth. So, and being in the bank, like every week I go, or some when I visit, so I talk to those tellers, and some are from high school, some didn't even go to high schools. But so I'll start off with the teller journey, like how it works. So in the teller, I talk to them, like I've talked with the financial advisor, I talked with different roles. So there were immigrants, there were people who were drop out from schools, drop out from universities. But what inspired me to work on that role was that people were saying that banks support us in terms of certifications. There are
Mm.
constant trainings, 12-week trainings, 6-week trainings. Bank is there for us. And then there are promotions, there are rewards, there is constant support that you have. And then you become a part of that internal network where you have all the opportunities. So they said, like, the branch manager sits with you. They want to understand where your journey wants to take you. They talk with each other, and they're so supportive that they will tell you, okay, our branch doesn't have that opportunity, but if you are willing to go to this particular branch, this has an option. Would you like to go? So
Wow.
that's the framework that you want to develop. And I talked to immigrant. One of the immigrants shared a story with me. So he worked very hard throughout the year, and he was one of the lucky ones to get a trip to, I think, Bahamas or somewhere with along the entire bank. And unfortunately, his visa had some issue, which he didn't know, that he can only come once to Canada. He thought he had a multiple entry visa. And so when he was flying back, he was stuck. He couldn't come back. But he said, like, the bank get him the hotel, got their lawyers to help him out. He had to go back to his home country. So, but the entire time, the team was there to support him. So he was an immigrant, and like, sorry, a student. He was he had no part of Canadian system, nothing, and he was just a teller. If you would see his experience, he said, like, I'm never going to leave this bank, no matter how
Wow.
long it's going to take, because they were with me, providing them lawyers, providing him tickets, providing him all the kind of support he needed. So the entire time they were there, like, they were asking him, how can we help you out?
That's an
And
incredible story. It sounds
yeah,
like, on one hand, the sector itself has so many opportunities, but on the other hand, it sounds like the culture that they're developing is really about taking care of their people, developing their people, and that's a place that you want to be.
yeah, that's
That sounds
exactly what I was
amazing.
saying. Yeah. So all these three roles that I'm defining, it is like, yeah, the titles might be different, but that's the good part. Like, when you get hired, they will give you training. Then they will tell you, okay, this is the step. These are the certifications you need to do. You need to take time off. We will give you that time off. We will pay for those certifications.
Wow.
Uh, and these certifications is not like a bank requirement. It is, as you know, Canadian banking system or finance sector is highly regulated, because it is actually dealing with people's lives and hard-earned money. So you have to be very safe and secure in that regard. And Canada is all about safety and for its people. So that's why those certifications is not like the bank needs it. They know you have the talent, you have the knowledge. These are just a requirement by law, and they pay for them. Be it $500, $1,000, $2,000, they will pay for it, and they climb your ladder slowly and steady. And at every stepping stone, they help you out to build up. And that's not the end. Like, from teller role, you can go to back offices. I was talking to one immigrant who started as a journey as teller, and now she is in charge and head of their back office department, which handles the asset management side of that bank. So she told me, like, you don't stop. Like, she said, yeah, she did night classes, she did weekend classes, she did all that because bank was there to support them. And the good part about the education in Canada is, like, there is a lot of tax saving. So the government gives you grant, and then when you make some money, there is a relief in terms of the education. So you save on taxes. So she said, with the government grant plus the tax saving, my education cost was nothing. So that is how. And the bank was there to support with the, book supplies or other things that they need if they have an exam, so they want to shift their schedule. That's what they had. Now, talking, if you would like to expand upon other areas as well, like, the salary ranges are good, so they might start at like $16 or so, but sky is the limit for them. Like, it's depending on how hard you work, how far you go. The call centers, I have seen people get $60,000, $75,000 as well. So it depends how many hours you are trying to put in, how much training you want to put in, how much encouragement, how much passion you show for that particular role. And the tax is the same thing. You might think, like, many people I have talked to, they think tax is seasonal, it comes once a year and that's it, like, it's gone. No, because tax, if you see it, like, everything shouldn't be a narrow focus thing. So tax for individuals come around April, but what about corporate taxes? What about payroll, which they have every organization needs someone to do payrolls, and every month, every weekly, it can be twice in a week, bi-weekly, they have to remit money to the government, and not many people know that. They have to file T4s for each of us, and some people make mistakes. So, I was talking to one guy, he charges $250 just for one T4 amendment. And
Wow.
if you would read about how to do it, you will be like, what is that money for? So in techs also, there are a lot of avenues for you. There are a lot of companies, both in every company needs someone in techs. Then there are proper accounting firms, there are other firms, and they have realized that you don't need those fancy degrees to do this, because techs is a very specialized field, and it requires someone who enjoys numbers, who enjoy talking to people, and you can do them. And so there are texts for GST, there is, so all year around there is something to do. And if you understand that system, if you understand how the government works, then, as you would know, Evelyn, you would be writing a lot of grants, and it all requires budgets, it all requires how you're going to use that budget. So if you understand how the government works, there are so much things that recently I started working with government of Canada, and that's what I found. Like, I get calls from charity, okay, how can we get the wage subsidy, how can we get the rent subsidy? Okay, we are new to this, we are not accountants, can you please guide us how to do the payroll system, how to do these calculations? Okay, these are the grants, how can we get these grants? So once you, if you really enjoy what you do, then that's like, youth can enjoy these roles, and building on these roles, making those connections, making, opening those doors for themselves, and taking the benefit. Like, the government of Canada gives you 1 year paid off to do the education you want to do. It gives you a day off on the, if you have some exams, and that's a paid leave. So, and even on the in terms of, if you have any membership fees for those exams or something like that, they finance that. So it's only that we think of these roles as like they are not anything. So other benefits aside, like the eyesight, the glasses, the dental, the all other benefits that come along with it, that saves you a lot of money, and the pension benefits, these are some of the things that youth need to realize. Yeah, because if you are coming from a place where you want to strive to reach the skies, then you have to work extra hard. Then you can't say like, I have to work only 4 hours a day or 5 hours a day or 8 hours a day. Then that is not something that, because everybody is doing that, right? So if you want to excel, that somebody who went to the university or who went that, they put in those hours, those years, and those things. So now, if you want to excel, if you want to compete at that level, if you want to grow in any career, this is not only in finance. So you have to take those evening classes, you have to study in the evening, you have to work on the weekends. But it is like in the start of your career. So first few years, if you build that thing, then you can constantly grow. And I have talked to so many people, like in teller role, in call center role, in text preparation role. Now they're at managers level or senior executives or directors. Yeah, it is a journey of 15, 20 years, but nothing is easy in this world. Nothing comes free. But if you strive for it, if you really want something bad, then you have to really work for it.
What you shared with us is like invaluable. Like I can't tell you how important that is for people to see, especially young people who have lost jobs in the service sector and feeling, oh my gosh, where else am I going to look? And so what you're saying is look at tech, look at finance, look at health. These are growing sectors that offer opportunities for young people. As we wrap this up, I want to ask you for your advice, one piece of advice you would give a young person to start their career in finance.
I would say to the young person that I did this mistake as well, that I was looking focused on the roles. I was focused on like the investment banking, big fancy words which we see on social media, on TV shows. So our problem of our youth or of our generation is our attention span is so short, and we are too focused on the things that we forget ourselves. So my focus is like, no matter what challenges that come your way, what problems you face, no matter how many people tell you that you're not good enough for this role, if you really want it, if you really think you can do it, if you should have the courage in yourself. And if you're resistant, if you are persistent with that thing, and if you try hard enough, nobody can stop you. So I would say challenges will come. The life is not going to be easy, things are going to get tough. And last year, if it has taught us anything, this is that we need to be prepared for any kind of thing, and we need to constantly adapt. If we are not adapted, like the basic beauty of our human nature is that we can adapt to any kind of situation. And that is something that I feel we as a human person, like we have forgot change. We need to realize how there was, we were horse riding, then cars came, now electric cars came. So constantly things are changing, our phones are changing, everything is changing. But we, in our mind, we've stopped to change. We need to adapt ourselves. We think, okay, this is a dead end. Now what to do? We need to focus on solutions rather than the problems.
Oh
So
my
once
gosh.
we have,
I can hear you speak about this all day long. This is amazing. It really is about adaptation, right? And accepting challenges. Like this makes me so excited. And I wish we had more time, but I'm going to bring you back to really do some motivation for young people because I think they
perfect.
need to hear that. Absolutely. Well, you know what? We're going to be looking out for your report on the finance sector and how youth can break in and these opportunities that you've been sharing. So thank you so much, Saad, for sharing your findings with us. We're excited to see that report. And everyone, stay tuned for our next interview with Ben, who's going to take a deep dive with us into the health sector. Saad, thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Evelyn. And I would like to say that I would like to invite all your viewers and the youth to the Youth Summit on 23rd and 24th of April. I will share the link and hopefully they will get to learn more about different opportunities and able to raise their concerns and voices with us. We are in this together, so don't worry.
Absolutely. And look out on the Career Foundation social media for more information on the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity Summit coming up on April 23rd. Okay, we'll see you on the other side. Okay, welcome back everyone to the Future at Work. We're jumping right in with Ben Williams in the final part of our three-part series on YouthFutures, the project that we did here at the Career Foundation with the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity. So thanks so much, Ben, for jumping back in to talk to us about your project. Why don't you kick us off with telling us a little bit about you and the project that you worked on?
Yeah, so I myself am a Canadian student, much like the others involved in the project. And sort of what brought me into this, like a lot of people with COVID, I had recently sort of pivoted and I found myself working in a long-term care home in Ontario, in a care home near my hometown. And that was sort of my first real exposure to actually working within the healthcare sector. So then when I came on board and joined this project and the YouthFutures team, I was given the option to sort of look into a sector and sort of what are the opportunities there for young people and how can we get them involved and into this sector. And so at the time I was really sort of interested and curious about the healthcare sector. And it was clear, I think, during the pandemic that that it's going through a very pivotal moment and there's a lot of opportunity for change. And there's also a lot of opportunity, not just for young people across the board, but specifically for young people, there's just a lot of opportunity to get involved right now in the healthcare sector.
Yeah, and the thing is about this project is that we really wanted to show young people opportunities that existed that they don't traditionally think about when they think about their first careers. So health is a great one for us to look at. But when we think about health, you know, the first thing people think about is like a scientist, a doctor, a nurse, a lab tech. And, you know, it's not as attractive to everyone as it could be. Why don't you tell us about the careers that you did your research into first, and then we'll go into the careers that young people, the pathways young people can take.
Yeah, so I would agree with you. I think a lot of people, when you think of health, the healthcare sector, you really focus in on, you know, the doctor, the nurses, those more traditional roles. And yeah, I think that's one thing. It really is like the healthcare sector. And I think that care part is you can really focus in on that part. And there really is a great deal of care that needs to be provided to people. And there's a lot of different ways that care can be provided. And that's sort of a bit more of where I focus my work on, where these less technical skills, but still very important and meaningful roles where young people can get engaged. So some of these roles are a medical administrative person, a dietary aide, so someone who is preparing and serving meals in hospitals or long-term care homes or other such settings, and a personal support worker, who is, I think, a role that's, especially here in Canada, we've sort of really seen how important and sometimes undervalued that role can be during the pandemic. And I think it's a really important role that we start to sort of change the Canadian mindset of how we value these roles. And it's definitely a role that we need more young people coming on board on.
Yeah, absolutely. And PSW was the one that you actually took on just because you saw the need to help people in long-term care facilities. And I love that about young people today, where they're interested in making impact and helping others. And so PSW is a natural calling. It was for you anyway.
Yeah, I think definitely for me, I was in a position. I was very privileged to be at home and in a safe space. But I think like anyone, when the lockdown started, I also felt like, what am I going to do now? And this opportunity kind of presented itself, and I guess I've always worked in roles where I want to help people in one way or another, and this was just another way of doing that. And I sort of found myself drawn to that. So I think that's one thing that's key for people who are considering working in the healthcare. I think you sort of do need that calling of wanting to help and support people. And I think that's what's more important, rather than, whether you have an academic background or an experience, or some people think, oh, I don't like blood, I can't work in healthcare, because there's this sort of idea that it's that very tangible part of health and injuries and stuff, whereas there's so much more to it. And I would definitely encourage anyone who feels that inside themselves to consider the healthcare sector.
So take us a little deeper into those specific careers that you chose. Tell us about how young people could get ready to enter any of those 3 areas that you identified.
Yeah. So to start off, these roles were all sort of selected sort of on 3 key things. Firstly, we're looking at roles that there is a demand for. There's actually a need for these roles, and secondly, they're roles that require a little bit less than the usual sort of more the roles you think of traditionally in the healthcare sector. So limited technical skills or qualifications or educational backgrounds are needed, so there's less barriers to entry. And then lastly, that we wanted careers where there's we could see a career trajectory. Once you start in that role, you can progress and have a more long-term career. So yeah, specifically in looking at the PSW role, which is definitely the demand is huge right now. And generally to take on that role, there is a certificate that you would take at a Canadian college. But generally that certification can be done in a short period of time. And it can be done part-time and usually less than a year, and full-time and around 4 months. And from my research, there are a lot of employers who are offering some sort of way to sort of fund that training course in a number of colleges. And yeah, it's a job where once you're on board, you can sort of stay in that role if you enjoy it, or you can switch from long-term care homes to retirement homes to hospitals, or if you want more of a flexible schedule, there's a great need for home care where you travel specifically to home. So it's a lot of flexibility. And it's also quite common for PSWs to then, once they've had a bit of experience and sort of settled, whether in their life or financially, to go back to school to become an RPN, which is a nurse, which is usually about a 2-year program. So it sets itself up for a career progression where you feel like you're learning new skills and moving forward to different roles. And then, if we're looking at the other roles that we sort of highlighted in the research, so one of them is a dietary aide, which is a really important role that I think a lot of times we don't think of. But obviously, anyone who is staying in a hospital or a long-term care home or any other healthcare setting, they need to eat, and it's important that they're eating food that's nutritious, that's well prepared, and that takes a lot a lot of people. There's a lot of human resources that go into that. And in general, yeah, the dietary aid role involves things like preparing the food, preparing snacks, ensuring that dietary requirements, allergen requirements are followed and adhered to, that there's portion control so that people are getting the right amount of food. And in some cases, assisting people with serving and actually eating the meal, particularly in long-term care homes where people might need more support with that. And yeah, it's the kind of role where as you start to get into it, and if you're interested in that kind of dietary side of things, there's opportunities to go back to, there's college programs where you can enhance the more cooking side of things, and come back and actually be a cook in a long-term care home or a hospital, because usually there's one person who's in charge of actually preparing the meals or planning the meals, who does need a bit more of an educational background.
But to enter that role, what's the educational background needed there?
Yeah, so generally, especially in the last year, a lot of posts that I found in my research are just looking for a safe food handling certificate, which is essentially an online course you can do in as little as maybe around 8 hours, and usually costs around $30. Certain healthcare institutions may ask for a college certificate related to food handling, but not all. And some that do ask for that requirement will actually say on the job posting, required within 1 to 2 years or a certain time period of being hired. So they're sort of flexible in recognizing there's such a need right now that they'll onboard you without that college certificate, and then allow you to get it part-time while you're there.
Also showing like an interest in moving you up to ensure that you have that diploma that allows you to take on the higher level of responsibility. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think that's definitely, in my research, that seems like a sort of a trend. And maybe it's emerged out of COVID, this huge need for people in these roles, that employers are more willing than perhaps they have been in the past to support with, upgrading skill sets in order to advance you into these other roles. Because with such a great need, I think employers recognize they need to limit their barriers to entry. Yeah, and so the last role is a medical office administrator, which essentially can look quite different, but essentially is providing administrative support, whether it's in a hospital, a long-term care home, or any other sort of medical setting, whether it's a doctor's office or a specialist office. There's a need for people who sort of have that background in communications and in managing people and schedules. And essentially, the medical office administrator, or MOA as it's often called, there's sort of that focal point at the institution that's helping to coordinate, connecting the patients to the doctor, scheduling the patients. Often they can be involved sometimes in the payroll side of things, or supporting human resources, particularly if it's a really small office, they might sort of take on those administrative type roles as well. So I think of the three, it's the most diverse in terms of what the role might look like.
Yeah, I imagine sort of this base of medical office assistant that can sort of go into, if you look at a root of a tree, it branches off into HR, it branches off into payroll, it branches off into billing, because it's a huge piece with the OHIP billing or insurance. Then you can have, like you said, the scheduling. I've also seen it where, I think I shared this with you in the past, Ben, where a friend of mine had gone into training doctors around something specific. So training and development coming from a medical office assistant program. So that's fantastic. You should also know that while you were working on the project, we were building a PSW training program, and that has been successful and will be launching in April. People will have free access to a short-term training in PSW with employment guaranteed at the end, as employers are already so invested in the project itself. So really 3 great ways of getting into the health sector without having a degree right now.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear about the PSW training program. I think that's definitely much needed right now. And yeah, I'm very happy for the people who will be involved with that.
Yes,
it's great
absolutely.
to hear.
Absolutely. So based on everything I've heard from yourself, from Saad, and from Kamilah, it sounds like there are lots of opportunities for youth to enter into the health space, into the finance space and tech space. Am I painting too rosy of a picture here?
No, I mean, I think as a young person myself, I think there sometimes can be a lot of fear or sort of doom and gloom when you think about entering the workforce, especially sort of that first job. But I think one thing that's important for young people to keep in mind is sort of just deciding what you want to do, or even broadly what you want to do, is sort of the biggest challenge. So I think if you're a young person who has identified you want to work in the tech sector or the health sector or the finance sector, that to me is sort of the biggest piece of work out of the way. And from there, you can kind of start yourself on the path sort of similar to these paths we've been talking about. Because I think when you're headed in one direction, you know sort of which doors to knock on, which makes it more likely that the door will open for you. Whereas when you're just knocking on every door, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. So yeah, I know it's not always easy out there as a young person, but I think if you know where you want to go broadly, you don't need to set yourself up on some very specific plan. There are resources out there for you, and especially online, and with organizations like the Career Foundation. So I think definitely never be afraid to ask for help or look for help or for supportive resources, and they'll help you get there, definitely.
Fantastic. And also for folks who haven't identified even the one area that they want to look at, I mean, explore, right? Explore and develop skills. I mean, Ben, you yourself, you're international development professional, but you jumped in when there was a need in PSW, and it landed you into a project that explored opening opportunities for youth in the health sector.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really important. And I think it comes back to what we talked about before, about that kind of mindset, or what you feel in your mind or your heart. And I think that only comes from exploring. So definitely every opportunity is a good opportunity, and you're building skill sets and experience, and all of that is important. So that's another thing for young people, is never feel like a job isn't the right job for you, because no matter what it is, you're getting something out of it, and it'll help you move on to the next thing.
Absolutely. I love that. Now, tell us about the summit that's coming up with our colleagues at the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity.
Yeah, so the Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity, as I think we've mentioned, has been running this Impact COVID Road to Recovery project over the last 4 or 5 months. And there's been around 80 young people like myself and Saad and Kamilah who have been involved in it. And essentially it's all sort of coming together, accumulating in this National Youth Summit. So that's going to be happening Friday, April 23rd and Saturday, April 24th. And really it's an opportunity to mobilize young people across Canada. This project is specifically focused on sort of creating a recovery plan, economic recovery plan for young people related to the ongoing pandemic and its economic knock-on effects. And yeah, it's really going to be a youth-driven event, sort of created by youth for youth, and there's going to be a lot of speakers and workshops. So it's definitely going to be a really great event, and I encourage anyone listening to join us there. And yeah, if you want more information, you can check out CCYP. They're on Twitter and Instagram, both at CCYP_CCPJ. And you can also find them on LinkedIn if you just search Canadian Council for Youth Prosperity. And I'm sure the Career Foundation will be sharing that with
Yeah.
your listeners as well soon.
We definitely will be doing a huge social media sort of awareness about the summit. So follow us on social media to get more information on how to register and get involved. So Ben, it's come to that time. Thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us and really giving young people some direction. Things are looking up out there. There are opportunities for people to enter, even without a degree, into sectors that they didn't even think about. So thanks for sharing that with us. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us, especially on this 3-part edition of Future at Work. And we'll see you next time as we explore other sectors and other industries that you can access. For more information, always check out our website at thecareerfoundation.com. And until then, stay safe and be well.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and web series. To learn more about our workforce development initiatives, visit our website at www.careerfoundation.com and follow us on social media. To listen to our previous episodes, subscribe to the Future at Work podcast on iTunes or Spotify.